John, good to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. When we were talking a few weeks ago, one of the things you said to me was that what you want to do is you want to use strong magnets to fix people's spines. Now, I have no idea how that works, and I'm sure most of the people that are listening don't. So why don't you explain what it is you're trying to do and how you're using magnets in that way?
Sure, I'm happy to try to paint a picture here. So what we're doing is straightening sideways curved spines, which is called scoliosis, right? So scoliosis is unnatural, it's unhealthy, and when it gets severe, there's a need to straighten that curve out. And we're focused primarily on children. This is a very prevalent problem. 2 to 3% of all the children in the world get scoliosis,
Wow.
and about 10% of them get severe cases. And in the severe case, we're talking that their spine is curved 40, 50, 60 degrees to the side. That impacts their obviously posture, their gait. It can impact the growth of their lungs and organs, cause a lot of pain. And, it's just going to be an unhealthy life for that person as they grow up and go through the next decades. And today, the treatment for that, the predominant treatment is a fusion surgery. And fusion surgery, the goal of that is to pull the spine straighter, but then to fuse the spine segments together. It's a big surgery. It's a over 100 years old surgery, right?
Right.
It's been done for decades and decades, and it immobilizes the spine. So that impacts the patient in different ways. Although their spine will be straighter, they don't have any movement, and takes a lot of hardware to pull that spine straighter. So we're trying to go about this in a different way. We're using a long, flat polymer ribbon or tether that we implant on the side of the spine to pull it straighter. And along with that tether that we attach to the spine, we attach a magnetic adjuster. So like you said, a very strong magnet
Mhm.
that is connected to a spool that can pull the tether tighter or loosen it. And I'll explain why that's important. And so once that's implanted in the spine, and the spine is pulled straighter. Over time, the surgeon, the doctor, can make adjustments to our system without going back into the operating room. That's important because it's not unusual for patients who have this problem to undergo multiple surgeries,
Right.
um, either to straighten the spine incrementally over time by going back into the operating room, or to go in and correct a problem because the implants that are used, they can fail. Screws can pull out or break.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rods they're attached to can break. So it's not uncommon for multiple surgeries to occur. With our product, the surgeon can take a very strong magnet and place it against the patient's back. And they can do this in their office or the clinic when the patient comes back post-surgery to get follow-ups. They place it up against the back, and then that magnetic system can be turned on. It can create a field of magnetic energy that is rotating in space, and that rotating field penetrates the body, you know, painlessly. It's just magnetic energy, and that can grab the magnet that we've implanted in the spine and cause it to rotate as well. And depending on which way we rotate that magnet, we can either tension the tether that we've implanted more or untension it and
Right.
tension it more to further straighten the spine. Or in the case of these children, after doing the first surgery, they'll continue to grow. And so
Right.
as they grow, their spine changes its dimensions, and it's possible that we'll need to untether this, untension it, so that they can get to their full height without this tether getting in the way. So the goal here is to allow the spine to grow, straighten it, but then allow the spine to continue to move to avoid this fusion surgery and all the downsides that it comes with.
Yeah. So,
You can
John,
think of it, sorry, Paul, you
no,
can think of it a lot like braces for the spine,
yeah,
because everybody understands how when you get braces put on your teeth, they partially straighten the teeth, but then they get tensioned and repositioned and adjusted over time to move those teeth into position. This is very similar, but the big difference here is that the teeth don't want to move and it hurts when you tighten it up. Whereas the spine is always moving, so when we're doing our adjustments, it's not a painful process.
but John, I mean, I was about to ask you. I mean, you used the example of the braces on teeth for straightening teeth. I mean, is that where the idea came from? I mean, how did you get started on this? I mean, it strikes me as an extraordinarily uh, innovative idea. I mean, how did you come up with the idea? Is it from thinking about braces? I mean, where did it come from, and how did you get started?
Yeah, really good story there, Paul. My group is actually got decades of experience working in the field of innovative technologies in medicine, and in particular, multiple different products developed for the spine. And because of that experience, uh, UCSF, the University of California in San Francisco, approached us and they said, well, we have this prototype and some patents that we've developed, but we need an experienced team to pick it up and commercialize it, take it out to the market. And would you be interested in doing it? So we took a look at it, and this product they had was for scoliosis, and it did include a magnetic adjustment, but it wasn't the same approach that the Auctus has developed. And the reason for that is just like any investor, when we took a look at this, we did our own diligence and we went out to the market. And in this case, that means going out to pediatric spine surgeons and saying, we're interested in how you're doing your surgeries and what problems you're seeing. And would this prototype and this approach help you? And what we learned was that the surgeons were intrigued by what we showed them, but they had started moving in a different direction, away from the fusion surgery I had mentioned earlier, to using a flexible polymer cord to pull the spine straight. And they had done a series of patients. So the initial product that they had been presented with from another company, they had done a clinical study, they had treated 50, 60 patients, and they'd seen the results and they said, boy, this has potential, but this approach in the product we have right now has some problems to it. One of which was what I had mentioned earlier, that these children continue to grow after surgery. And after they've implanted this tether to straighten it in one direction, the spine can grow so it starts curving in the other. So that's a significant complication. And the polymer cord they were using was breaking a lot. And they said, we like this magnetic thing you were showing you. Is there a way you can combine that with this cord that we've started using? Can we come up with something that's a next generation product that's a better approach? Is that something you're interested in? So we were very intrigued. It's important when you're developing a new technology for the market to understand what the market's needs are. What not only does the patient need, but what does the surgeon need to make their process go better, the surgeries go smoother, they have better outcomes for the patients. So when we got started, Paul, we actually not just took the feedback from these surgeons, but we founded the company with them. So, in addition to our experienced management team, we have three spine surgeons who are co-founders of the
Ah,
company.
okay.
And from day one, once we got the company founded, we worked with them hand in hand, developing the idea that I've described to you, this magnetic braces for the spine. And as we've gone through the process, these surgeons have not just given us feedback on the designs as we, put them together on a computer and build them and make prototypes, but they've also been there testing the product with us by implanting it in human cadavers, by putting it in animals such as pigs and seeing how it works and giving us feedback all along as we go through this process.
And let me ask you, I know the medical world is rightly so concerned with efficacy, concerned with demonstrating efficacy before they release things. I mean, how did you, I mean, it sounds great now because it's developed. I mean, how did you get the evidence to demonstrate to other surgeons that this method, is more effective than, the fusion thing? I mean, how did that process work?
Well, there's multiple steps to that. I mean, I would say uh, some of which I've already described. Certainly, um, implanting this in a cadaver spine, showing that process, taking the x-rays can show to other surgeons, hey, this product can fit
Mm,
into patients. It's easy to use. Uh, that's one step. Um, Implanting it in animals and then following those animals over a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, and then in that case, showing that we can do these adjustments using our magnetic system to change the tension in the implanted animals. That's another step. And collecting that data. And it's important to understand that in this field of implants, these are going in the body of the patients potentially indefinitely. So there's extensive testing around that you do to show safety, uh, as we say, on the bench before you ever place it in the first patient. So in addition to those two steps, another area in terms of the bench testing is to put it in a large mechanical test machine where you're tensioning it and cycling that tension millions of times to simulate it being in the body for years and decades and showing that the system can withstand that kind of force and it doesn't fall apart. Nothing breaks. You don't have a weak point that
mm,
fails after a year or two. So we go through all that testing. So that we want to do even to prove it to ourselves that
mm.
it's safe. And once we've done all that kind of work that I've described, you can not only feel comfortable, internally, and as an example, normally in this field, we say, okay, we're really comfortable with our product. I would, use it on my own, mother or my own brother. But in this case, we'd say, boy, we're so comfortable, we'd use it on our own children, right? And once you get to that point, you can start doing patients. Um, we can go to other countries and share that information with them, and they can give us permission to start treating patients. We can compile all that data and present it to the FDA. And when you go in the US and present it to the FDA for this kind of an implanted product, it's a two-step process. First, the FDA reviews that data and says, okay, it looks like you've done your homework. This looks like it could be safe. We'll give you permission to do a clinical trial. And you can do, say, 50 patients or 100 patients, collect that data, and then bring that back to us so we can review it and see if it's not just safe in patients, but then efficacious, like you said, and actually helps these patients. And then we'll review that data and give you approval to sell it. So that's the two-step process with the FDA in the US. And it can be a similar process in other countries, but in some cases, you can just get permission to start treating patients and give the regulatory agency feedback as you're doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, why did you I mean, that's a long process and it involves lots of opportunities for things to go horribly wrong, to put it simplistically. I mean, why did you want to take the risk?
Well, in particular here, Paul, this is an area that, as I mentioned earlier, is dominated by fusing these spines
Mm,
with lots of hardware, titanium rods and screws, large incisions to put all that hardware in the patients, stripping the muscles and ligaments off the spine and getting the spine to bleed so all the vertebral bones grow together and create this fusion. That's a massive surgery
Mm.
with a lot of downsides. I mean, just right off the bat, the patients, and we're talking 10, 12-year-old girls, are having very long incisions and scars. Could be from their, neck all the way down to their hips. They're getting a lot of hardware put in. They'll be in the hospital for 3, 4, 5 days before they get discharged. They'll be at home for 4 or 5 weeks before they've healed up enough to go back to school, or in the case of an adult, go back to work. And even then, for the children, when they go back to school, they're not doing any physical education classes and no rigorous activity for at least 6 months while they're healing up and this fusion occurs. And then when they are able to do that, their spine isn't moving anymore.
Mm.
So that can prevent a lot of the activities that they might have enjoyed or competed in before, depending on how big that surgery is. So just that part has huge downsides for these kids. And I saw this personally with a close friend of mine. One of my MIT colleagues, his second child, daughter Maya, was diagnosed with scoliosis when she was 11. And she had to wear a torso brace, which is a kind of a plastic cast that you get
Mm.
strapped into and you wear all day and all night, just taking it off to bathe, to try to support their spines while they're growing to prevent it from getting worse. But that doesn't work for every child, and about 30% of the children who wear those still get worse and have to have
Yeah.
surgery. And that happened to Maya when she was 12 years old. And Maya was a ballerina, soccer player. She, was, skier on the slopes, and I skied with her family, saw some of her performances. And all of that changed after this surgery. In addition to all the recovery I mentioned, she couldn't do ballet anymore. And the skiing got much, less rigorous. She had to come up with all new activities to engage herself and, kind of pivot her life. I just was really shocked by that that to happen to a child at that kind of an age. And I just thought there had to be a better way and a different option that we could work on to provide these children with a different outcome, different possibilities for their lives.
Yeah, and it must. I mean, that seems to me to be a really good thing to work on, actually. So I totally get that. Let me ask you, in terms of where you're going with this. I mean, what are you building towards with this, and what sort of challenges do you? I mean, you've obviously overcome quite a lot of things to get to where you are. I mean, what do you think? What would you say are the big challenges that you confront going forward?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest challenges that I think we've done a great job with confronting, but until we do a lot of patients, we'll find out. And that is this, magnetic adjustability.
Mm.
Um, Magnets are around now that have very strong forces and that allow us to do this product and this approach that we're using. But a magnetic force um, falls off from the source geometrically. So that means to the power of three. So you go from 1 inches to 2 inches, your force doesn't drop by one half, it can drop by, 75% or more. So we've spent a lot of effort and we've engaged many different experts in this field, experts um, uh, in the field of magnetic modeling and the science of it, experts in product development and testing. We have, one of our co-founders who's worked with these magnets before, so we had a baseline, but, we really see this as one of the key value adds that we're bringing to the market. And want to get that as solid as we can. So just to give some numbers around that, after the first few prototypes, we felt like we were pretty consistent with doing this magnetic adjustment when the product was 4 inches away from the adjusters. So you could place the adjuster on say, the back of the patient, and the implant could be 4 inches away. And that doesn't seem very far, but the spine is down in the body. When you feel it on your back, you're feeling the very end of the back of the spine, and we're attaching this to the side of the front of the spine. So in children, we should be fairly good with almost all of them at 4 inches, but then if you're treating adults, it could be deeper. So we spent a lot of time on that, and now we feel like we can do these adjustments when there's 6 inch separation. And again, that sounds like, boy, you only added 2 inches, 50%, but that increased our capability almost 3 times to get there. So that's an area that we feel like we've taken care of. Um, and we won't have a problem with. But like I said, until you do lots of patients, you don't know. And that brings me back to, your earlier question about how do you convince other surgeons about this. The big key there is the clinical outcome data.
Mm.
And in this field, kind of as a bare minimum, these are, young children are growing. We need to collect that data on a group of children for at least 2 years, right? Sometimes you can, test your product and look at the results in a week or a few months. In this case, with these children, we'll need to continue to collect data for at least 2 years, and then even beyond that to make sure that the product's working and these surgeons are happy with it. So that's probably our biggest challenge right now. The positive part of that is it's very clear what these surgeons will be looking for. One is the efficacy, and that is the straighter spine. Very easy to measure. They just take x-rays of these patients, and from the x-rays, they measure how much curve that spine has to the right or left. And they had the starting point before they did the surgery. And we're talking, like I said before, we're talking severe curves, 40, 50, 60 degrees. And then at 1 year, at 2 years, what's the curve of that spine? In our case, it's not like after surgery they're going to get a measurement and then they're going to see if it gets worse over time. We're going to continue to do these adjustments over time.
Mm.
So most surgeries, they'll see what they get after surgery and it could get worse. We'll continue to get better. That's where we'll be convincing these doctors, how straight is that spine at 2 years? And then the other piece, what are the problems that have occurred over that time? Has the product held up? Has there been any failures? Have there been any other complications? We believe with the design we have, the testing we've done to date, that we'll have significantly fewer complications than the products that are being used on the market today, as well as a group of patients with spines that are even straighter than any of the products that are used today. So we believe we'll achieve positive results on both of those goals, and having that will be we'll get all the surgical community excited.
And some great outcomes there. Well, let me ask you, you mentioned about going into business with a bunch of other surgeons. I mean, what kind of company are you trying to build? I mean that's quite an interesting move going into business with surgeons. I mean, what was behind that, and what's the logic for doing that? I mean, like I said, what kind of company is it you're trying to build?
Well, I mean, the goal for the mission of the company from the beginning was to um, ensure, better outcomes for these children so that they uh, not only have straighter spines, but that they have, a better life with a mobile spine and they can continue their activities. In order to get there, we need to go beyond the development and testing we've done and get that clinical data, get the regulatory approvals that I mentioned earlier, and then start getting this out into the market. And as a company that is, starting from ground zero, we don't expect that Auctus Surgical will, be able to get this product all around the globe, but we do plan to introduce it into several markets: the U.S., Canada, Europe, Australia, possibly Japan and China, and initiate that process, get surgeons in all those locations using it, continue to collect the clinical data beyond what we need to get the initial approvals, continue to follow these patients after we're on the market and selling it to build a lot of evidence. And then ultimately, Auctus Surgical, the goal would be to be acquired by a large corporate medical device company
Right.
that then can grow this so that every child around the globe will have access to it. That's their goal in the process. We need to go through the steps I mentioned to get to the point where a large corporation will say, "Wow, you have a great product and great evidence, and we want to be selling that product, and offer to buy the company, and we can hand it off."
I mean, the thing that was behind my question about asking about going into business with surgeons is, of course, that they really understand these things as well as anyone, don't they? I mean, so I guess you build in a level of intelligence into the way the business works in terms of how you might evolve going forward. Let me quickly ask you about, we touched on where you're going. What would success be for you? I mean, just give me a sense of what that would look like before you. I mean, it's not simply about selling out for a chunk of money, is it? I don't think.
No, no, absolutely not. Success for us is Um, kind of, in my mind, twofold. One is, providing a better solution for these children
Yeah.
first, so
Mm.
that they get success for their own lives. But it's also advancing the practice of spinal surgery forward, so that it's set up to provide better outcomes, not just for these children, but then, like I said earlier, hopefully for adults with these kind of spinal conditions. And then it can be leveraged from there. In the medical technology space is no different than any other technology space, in that we develop based on what's out there now and how we can improve on it. And I would expect that in 20 years somebody will be improving on what Auctus Surgical did. And we want to set up the conditions for that as well. I've done that with my whole career, expand on what other people had developed before me. And in particular, in spine surgery, I've talked about this uh, fusion technology, right? And that has been the mainstay, not just for scoliosis, but for other spine
Yeah.
problems and
Yeah.
spine surgical approaches in the past. But in a lot of those areas, new products have been developed. As an example, there are artificial discs to replace, areas in the neck that have worn out. And those are now becoming really the standard of care instead of fusing the neck. And then there's other areas where limiting the motion of the spine with implants as opposed to fusing it are becoming preferred solutions for a lot of patients. That hasn't happened in scoliosis yet, and our goal is to ensure that it does, so that the spine is designed to move and to support people's torso and their movement. So ultimately, we don't want to fuse it as a solution to their problems. We have to come up with solutions that allow the spine to
Yeah.
continue to function, just like when you get an artificial knee when your knee's worn out, instead of fusing the knee.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, at what point did you realize that you were going to be the guy to fix this problem?
I think that's a great question, because we certainly um, uh, came across this when UCSF reached out to us, and we started the company when we talked to these surgeons. But it was really when I saw what happened to my friend's daughter
Yeah.
that I said, I've got to do something about this. Unfortunately, I couldn't help her out because, there is a time lag between, we're
Yeah.
working on this and we get it ready for patients. And she didn't have the time to wait. She had to go through the fusion. But that was a real eye opener for me.
Yeah.
Even though I knew about it before that, seeing the impact really made me decide this is what I'm focused on. I'm going to make sure this happens.
Yeah. Let me ask you about, you've made the decision to sort of do something about this. There's at that point, I guess there are still a lot of unknowns, aren't there? What, I mean, what have you learnt from making that commitment? I mean, has that commitment, um, been difficult to see that through? Is it something that you get a lot of joy out of? I mean, tell me about the kind of the impact of making a commitment to sort those problems out. I mean, how does that feel?
I mean, as you said, Paul, there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
There's there's ups and downs. I'd say um, one of the biggest challenges for making that commitment has been convincing others, in particular investors,
Yeah.
of the potential of this problem. And the reason I say that is that there's just kind of a gut response with the typical investor, even investors who are very experienced in this area of new medical innovation, that, you know, coming up with a solution for a problem in children is a small market. There's, not a lot of money to be made there. So uh, a lot of doors weren't open to us or were closed right away when, the word, pediatric, solution or children focused came out of my mouth. And I found that very frustrating to say
Yeah,
the
I'm
least
sure.
because
I'm sure.
it's
Yeah.
a super important problem. But what I've done is really uh, doing all the homework and research that I can do to, illustrate and illuminate this market and the potential here. And there's a lot of different areas in this market that I've, uncovered and put together in my, literature and presentations to show the large potential of this. Even the existing market to treat these children, our main focus, which is, adolescents with scoliosis that are undergoing surgeries now, that is a fairly attractive opportunity right there. Now, in this space, they sort of say, boy, you need a billion-dollar market to attract investors, and even better if it's a 2 or 3 billion dollar market. So I've shown now that in the U.S., it's with the existing surgeries that are done, it's about a 1 billion-dollar market.
Wow.
But then you go to the rest of the world and you start looking at other opportunities. There are very small children who have problems with scoliosis. It's not as big a market, but there's a big need there. There is also children who either themselves or more likely their parents said, wow, this surgery is big. It's going to really impact my child. I understand they're having problems now, but we're going to wait. We're not going to do this on our 13-year-old. We're
Mm.
going to wait until they're 16, 17. If nothing catastrophic happens, we're going to wait so they're older to go through this horrendous surgery. That's another group of patients
Yeah.
that need to be treated. And then I mentioned the torso braces before, Paul, because that's an important thing to consider. These patients were had a moderate case of scoliosis such that, like, we've got to put you in this brace so it doesn't get worse. But for the most part, when they wear those braces, for a year or two as they're growing, they don't get better. I mean, in some cases they do, but in most cases they're just happy if they stay the same. That is a large group of patients
Yeah.
who have a deformity. They still have some pain and discomfort, and they don't have a solution for them today, right? Surgeons won't operate on them because of all the downsides have been talking about with the fusion approach and with the problems with the newer tethers on the market with them breaking and overcorrection. So surgeons wait until the patient has a 40-degree curve or a 45-degree curve before they operate because of all the potential things that could go wrong. They don't offer the surgery to patients with smaller curves. But these surgeons have been saying, wow, if we have a product that is less invasive,
Yeah.
and I didn't mention that earlier, instead of the long incisions, we can implant our device through, little incisions. They can use a scope to attach it to the spine. The patient after the surgery can leave the next day and go home.
Wow.
After they go home for, 3, 4 days a week, they can go back to school or they could go back to work.
They're
We're
very
not doing we're
significant
not doing all the
improvements.
damage to put it in and to create a fusion so they don't have that same
Mm.
level of pain. They can recover faster and get back on with their life. So with those upsides, and if we don't have all the failures that the current products on the market have. This could open it up to all these other
Yeah.
children that don't have any solution for them today.
Yeah.
So when you add all those numbers up, we do have the multi-billion dollar opportunity with this market. And the other piece that I've been able to bring to investors' attention is, some of them will have experience in spinal product development in those markets. And in general, that's, adult products, right? That is historically where, 95% plus of all the innovation and product development has occurred. What I've been able to point out to them are some of the positives of the pediatric market. Yes, it's smaller, but that means it's more focused. Instead of having to go out and sell this product in the US, for example, to, 6,000 hospitals and 2,000 ambulatory surgery centers, we can focus on just the 400 or 500 children's hospitals and medical academic centers because these are challenging surgeries. That's where they're being done. If the child goes to the local hospital, they send them off to, these surgeons in these big centers and the children's hospitals. So that makes it an easier market to go out and sell to because you're not running around as many. You don't have to build as big an organization. So that's beginning to register with investors when they hear about that.
Yeah, and I can see why that's attractive, actually. You can see the logic to that. Let me just ask you about the process that you've been through. I mean, to what extent do you feel that there is a correlation between the amount of effort and energy you've put in and the success that you've had? Or is it that, this idea just kind of popped out and, we're just going to run with it? I mean, is there a correlation there?
Yeah, there is. And what I would say is, as much as I've explained a few of the, challenges along the way, there are, almost daily challenges,
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
and one of the ways you overcome them is to continue to execute, and that can be in lots of areas, finding the right partners to work with,
Yeah.
building the next prototype, running it through the testing, seeing where the challenges are. This is a, ongoing iterative process. Sometimes there's a few pivots here. We haven't had to go way back to the drawing board or anything. The initial concept is what we've continued to move forward, but we've learned a lot along the way, fine tune our product. There's some little tangibles I can share, such as, you start with something that you think you'll work and you test it and you say, okay, this is working. We need to make it better. And in
Mm.
the medical implant world, one of the areas that is making it smaller, right? So you make
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
just to make sure it's working, but okay, now to get it ready for using it in patients, we've got to shrink this down by 50% or so to fit it in the body comfortably. So that's an area we've iterated on and
Yeah.
refined our design so we're able to do that.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I'd have thought pretty interesting doing that. Let me also ask you about the kind of the roller coaster. I mean, building a business is always every CEO I've ever spoken to has said it's a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, how do you, as the CEO, kind of get through the inevitable crises that kind of come your way, land on your desk, give you headaches?
Yeah, well, you try to build resilience and
Yeah,
you know to your team really because I'm not doing this alone, Paul. There's no way.
no,
I've got a fantastic team, and when you build resilience into your team so that they know that these challenges exist, they know there's going to be up days and down days. You surround yourself with problem solvers so that if you get frustrated and you're hitting a wall, there's somebody else on the team who's actually got an idea to move you around that wall, get you over it. And building that resilience is setting the expectations with them of here's our mission, here's our goals, here's the timelines we're going to hit. And let's take celebrations when we hit some of those. I mean,
yeah,
some of those we're going to miss and they're going to get pushed out. But if you do a little celebrating and acknowledgement along the way when you hit some of them, that can help build that resilience so you can get through those, as you say, the problems, the roadblocks, the challenges that we do face.
yeah.
Hopefully not on a daily basis, but they come all the time.
They do. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's interesting. You make the point about resilience. I mean, to what extent have you been able to build that resilience in your team, and how have you done that? I mean, is it simply that you recruit people that are good problem solvers, people that are able to bounce back, or have you been able to sort of build that into the way you work with people? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I think it's both of those. In our case, in this group, the main team, we'd worked together before, right? So my co-founders on the business side and on the, product development side here, we'd all worked together in a previous spine company
Okay.
that developed an
Okay.
implant for, adult spine surgeries for adults with low back pain. Um, and in that case, we were quite successful. The company raised 2 rounds of funding. We developed the product. We, got it out there, tested it. We improved on the first generation product, got the second generation product on the market, started selling it, and then we were acquired by Stryker Spine, and that was a 16x multiple, which is a fantastic
Wow,
return.
that's really
And
good.
one of the things we learned along that way was what I'm going to say was very important to get that success was really capital efficiency, focusing the money on the problem and not focusing it on what I'm going to say is the people or building an empire. What I found in this area is to always engage with what I'm going to say are experienced operators, people who are hands-on, are willing to, get in there and, wear many hats and solve these problems. So, and what I'm speaking of here is the management level is interested in doing that. They're not just,
Yeah.
looking to hire 4 people to work for them to do those problem solvings. They want to get their hands dirty too. So that's what we built in the last team. And we've got a lot of those same people here. So from that standpoint, I had already knew the group of people and we'd seen the experience of us making it through those challenges, um, which can get ugly. But if you're still sitting there at the end of it, then you had what it took. I like to joke that we have not just overlapping synergies, but we put up with each other's BS,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Because it's not all fun and games.
No, no,
So
no.
I was successful there. But in terms of um, the other piece of it, one thing I found is to be as transparent and communicative as I can
Right.
with the team and with every level of contributor. So it's not like, oh, I know what's going on and I'm feeding what people need to know to do their jobs. I don't take that approach. I try to share as much of the whole company, the strategy, what's going right, what's going wrong, where we're seeing troubles, where we're not, with everyone, because that motivates them to contribute and help out as a
Yeah.
team to solve them. And when something happens, they're not blindsided. They kind of knew
Yeah.
what we were shooting for, and they knew where the big challenges were.
Yeah.
I find that is very important. So it doesn't matter what level they're at. Um, it matters what their motivation is, and the more you can share with them, I found that
Yeah.
helps with that motivation,
Yeah. And it's
reduces the number of surprises, and builds a group that wants to solve those problems together.
yeah. It's also, I mean, what you've described to me is really about treating people like adults, isn't it? And these are the facts of the situation. These are the things we have to
Yeah,
deal with. I mean, you've got to treat people that way, I think.
yeah,
Certainly
and
in a modern business.
right, and you want to give people the tools so that they can help solve these problems too, right? You
Yeah.
want to, and one of those tools is the information, right? You give them the information, you give them the support, depending on what level they're at, you help them initially with thinking through those problems and get them to the point where they're comfortable
Yeah.
doing it on their own. I mean, just a simple example. Um, you know, if it's a junior engineer and they've got a piece of this product that they're responsible for, you want them to be comfortable spending a certain amount of money that, without having to ask permission, right?
Yeah.
Uh, depending on where they worked before or their experience level, some of them, I don't know, can I spend $1,000? One of my mentors, and, previous companies, put it very succinctly to me. It's certainly at my level, the decisions on where to spend the money, if it if it's not causing me to go out there, 3 months earlier to raise the next round, and I can see where everything's going, spend the money, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and if it's $1,000, $5,000, that's not making me go out there,
Yeah. And you want people to get
earlier.
on with things, don't you? You need people to get on with things, otherwise you
Right.
don't make progress. You mentioned earlier on about things sometimes turn ugly, was your phrase. I mean, tell me about that, the flip side to the coin. It's great when people solve problems. It's great when people are making progress. What about the flip side? I mean, for example, give us an example of somewhere where you failed, and what does that reveal? What does that reveal to you?
Well, I'd say, I'm human, right? And, maybe an area where I've failed is uh, being super focused on the milestone, the deadline,
Mm.
and getting frustrated when that's, slipping away, and, not seeing the bigger picture and treating people properly around that. Everybody, has their up days and down days, and so, maybe I'm not treating as much as I like to think I always do, and I think I'm, you know, better than a lot of the people I've worked for in the past. But I have got my bad days where maybe I'm blaming the the person instead of really looking at the bigger picture. It's never uh, positive for the company to really focus on the people and blame the people as opposed to looking at the process. In fact, Paul, I'll say even when it is directly related to the person not doing their job, well, I still blame the process because that should have been identified
Mm.
by myself or that person's direct supervisor. And that should have been addressed, before it, made a big impact on the milestones, the timeline in the company, right? And addressed either by supporting that person and, helping them overcome those challenges so they can deliver, or it has to be done sometimes, helping that person find a better opportunity and getting their replacement, right? And I would say, you know, if anything, I'm more likely to fail on the side of, helping that person um, solve their challenges and issues so that they're contributing as much as everybody else. And, you know, and earlier in my career, I certainly, as a manager, leader, tried to do that, probably too much to a fault. And again, I like to point back to what I've learned in this business and learned from those that went before me. Uh, and when I was in more of uh, the vice president of,
Mm.
development or operations role, and had the CEO that I'm reporting to. I did have um, the comment once where I was really seeing progress with an individual and getting them to contribute better. But the CEO asked, "Well, but how much is that taking you away from your other
Yeah.
people?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
don't you need to support them just as evenly, right?" So, you can get little spurts of giving some individuals more support and attention, but if it's subtracting from your overall team, that's not going to help the company out.
Yeah, some difficult judgments in those
Yes.
circumstances, aren't they? Yeah. And if this, I mean, what would you say is at stake if this whole thing doesn't work?
Well, I mean, you know, ultimately, what's at stake is these children's
Yeah.
lives. I mean, it's not technically life or death, but their lives are impacted for decades after the surgeries they're getting now. So it is significantly the quality of their life is at stake. Um, ultimately, everybody in the company, they can move on to their next job, right? And that happens sometimes when you're doing these startups. They don't always work out. Um, I have had a fairly good track record of more often than not working out, and I'm, proud of that. And I think there's, good reason and strategy behind that. But ultimately, what's at stake are these kids.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a really important motivator, I guess, isn't it? And one final question. I mean, what is it in terms of legacy? What is the legacy that you want to leave here? I mean, it seems to me that, I mean, you've talked about the importance of those young people, how that inspired you to kind of get into this. I mean, to what extent is the impact on the kids potentially the legacy that's most important to you, or is it something else?
No, I'd say that's the most important for
Mm,
sure. I mean, in addition to that, there's certainly other areas, the impact on the team and
mm,
the people that are working there, and both an impact and them, have sharing in this legacy, but then them also, learning from this and moving on to the next thing that they're going to have an impact on. And there's the legacy I mentioned earlier in this field in general. To bring this product out there isn't just going to help these children. It, I believe, is going to open up other opportunities
yeah, yeah,
for impact for patients where it's not a one and done approach
mm,
to the surgery, where people start thinking about, boy, this area of medicine, there are challenges, and maybe a way to address those challenges are to have an answer that's an adjustable product
mm,
after the surgery. So I do think it'll potentially open up avenues there with the success with Auctus Surgical.
yeah. John, I mean, I thank you for taking a bit of time to talk us through that. I mean, I very much agree with you. I mean, I hope that is what happens, that it opens up new opportunities. And these things have a tendency to do that, don't they? I mean, you come up with one new thing and it leads to a whole load of other new things, which is really how we progress, isn't it? And it's really how medicine progresses and science and innovation and technology. It's that kind of process of exploration, really, and discovery that is so important. And it seems to me you're really driving that forward, which is
Yeah,
fabulous.
you
Fabulous
you
to hear
you
about it.
you want to see that
Yeah,
multiplicative effect where it's not just that one patient or that group of patients, but it expands beyond there.
yeah. John, thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with us, and good luck going forward.
Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate all the questions and the enthusiasm and support. I always tell everybody who hears the story, become part of the team, watch, what we're doing, and get the word out there.
Good to see you, John. See you soon.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.